Perfect. Brilliant. Right. So good morning, everybody. My name is Rosie and I am the PR and Policy Officer here at EAUC, and I'm going to be hosting today's webinar. This is the second in the series of this year's Cup of Tea and SDG, and just to let you know, like I just said, this is being recorded for use as a resource. We've organised these to celebrate Global Goals Week, which is an annual week of action and awareness and accountability of the SDGs. It was launched by Project Everyone and the United Nations back in 2016. And today is also the second day of the UN's SDG Summit, so it's all very timely. Just a little bit of housekeeping to go over. So I've placed all of your microphones on mute, except the speakers at the moment. That's just to keep background noise to a minimum. If you're having issues with your audio and you want to ask me questions during the Q&A, just pop either myself or my colleague Claire Dugomot a message in the group chat functionality. If you want to use that chat box functionality, you just need to click on the chat button at the bottom of the screen. You can either send messages directly to people within the webinar or to everybody. This webinar will have a short Q&A session after each of the two presentations. If you have any questions for the speakers, you can either send them to me or Claire prior to the Q&A, or during the Q&A, I'll ask if you can press the put your hand up functionality button, which should be easily seen on your screen. What else do I need to tell you? Please do make sure that if you haven't, could you change your screen name to your actual name, just because that makes it easier if you are going to ask any questions during the Q&A. Onto the webinar itself. So it's fair to say, I think, that the launch of the SDGs in 2015, after that, they've really taken hold in HE and FE, a really powerful global call to action language that's actually very accessible to people. Last year, we started these webinars to coincide with Global Goals Week, and they went down really well. It's proven useful to members to see how other institutions are tackling the SDGs. So we took on feedback from last and like when it presented, to get a better flavour of some of the initial information. And this SDG that covering was one of those today and production. So first up, we have got Maria Kirrane. She is Sustainability Officer at University College Cork. So sorry if I got your name wrong then. I think you're going to talk a little bit about how University College Cork got top spot on Times Higher Education impact rankings for SDG 12 globally, aren't you, Maria?
Yeah. Hopefully. So I guess that's kind of the main point of the short presentation this morning. I guess just to kind of preempt that by saying that obviously the Times Higher Education ranking was it was a pilot year, so not all universities took part. We decided to take part because we knew that we had a lot of information that we were able to get together quite quickly within the time frame, and we put it in. And yeah, we have been doing a lot around responsible consumption and production, so we were delighted then to get the #1 spot on that one. So are my slides up? Or do I go through them? Oh, I share my screen, do I? Or...
Either or.
Oh yeah, can you go through them actually? Sorry.
Can you put them up, Claire?
Do you have them?
Claire?
Oh yeah. Okay. So yeah, so you can, that's just my intro, so you can go on to the next slide, please. Yes, so I guess just to say, we've been working on sustainability through our Green Campus programme for the last 12 years. And I'll tell you a little bit about how that works as well. But basically we it's a whole of institution approach, really, like everything, we all work together across the university, and it's very much student led. So we very much try to follow what the students are looking for, and then to use the research on campus and put it into practice. So in 2018, we submitted under the STARS programme from the Association for the Advancement of Sustainability in Higher Education. And that was a huge, big undertaking to gather all the information that we needed to put that submission into STARS. And a lot of that then was useful when it came to doing the Times Higher Education ranking, because we put basically 6 months of data collection across all of the offices within UCC. We'd worked on that for the STARS submission, so then we had all of that information available when it came to putting in the Times Higher Education submission. So across UCC, we have a Green Campus Committee then that really is led by the students. We have a Green Forum that's led by our Deputy President and Director of Buildings and Estates. And then we have a review group, and I'm the Sustainability Officer, and really my role is to coordinate everything. So if you click next there. So we kind of use the Green Flag programme then and ISO 50001 as our frameworks that guide how we work. So that kind of continual improvement and involving all of the stakeholders across everything that we do. And then we kind of use the recognition in the international rankings as, I guess, the good news stories that we can share with the broader community and get everyone on board. So you can go to the next slide. Yeah, so the next slide. So the Green Campus programme, just really quickly, because I don't have that much time, but it's based on an environmental management system. It's a 7-step programme. And the real key kind of elements of it is that it's based on continual improvement. So you're comparing yourself with yourself, you're not comparing yourself across, you're not benchmarking. It's all about collaboration. So the very first part of Green Campus is getting together a committee that involves all of the stakeholders on campus. You literally can't be involved in the Green Campus programme unless you've done that. And it's just a framework, really. It's very flexible. You can adapt it to your specific context, and you can take a thematic approach if you want. So you can focus each year on one specific theme that is very important to you or your students or your community at that time. So the next slide. So then to come to responsible consumption and production. So the Green Campus programme in UCC began back in 2008, and it actually came from, it was an idea of students, and it was born out of students being unhappy with waste management on campus. So originally it did come down to waste and the amount of waste that we were producing and our recycling behaviours. And what we found is that even, 12 years after that, it's waste, it's plastic, it's those elements that really are still the most emotive for our students. They're the things that students feel like they have the most control over, as opposed to energy or carbon or something like that. So a lot of what we do, really, we hang on waste, I guess, in some ways, and we try to bring other themes in along with that. So we have seen improvements. We have reduced our waste tonnage by 1/3 since 2008. We've increased our recycling rates by about 60%. And just in the timeline there, if you look, basically where our big change happened was back in 2017, when our library building decided to really tackle waste and to put a huge big campaign around it. And then around the same time, so that happened around August, September, in October of that year, we had the Blue Planet effect. And so by the end of that year, we really had the whole community really engaged in waste management, and we had the students really got on board with it. And that's kind of where then the students took it on, went with the plastic free campaign. They launched a petition, and in 2019 the president signed up to that as well, that UCC would be single-use plastic free by 2023. So it's kind of, we have the activism element, and we also have the top-down management element as well, of the students saying we want to be plastic free, the president signing up and saying, okay, yeah, we're going to see how we can do that. So the next slide. So the library, just to pull out a little bit about that, we kind of really focused our attentions on that one building, because it's really kind of the heart of UCC campus. So every student will walk through the doors of our library building at some point during their 4 years in college. So it's become the focal point for a lot of our campaigns. We had a team within the library that were working on energy saving projects. So that was a team of staff that were working there. And we worked with them then to put in a binless office system across the whole library. So we took out all of the small desk bins and just put in 2 small recycling stations on the ground floor of the library building. So just by doing that, we had 167 bins in that building. So even just by taking all those bins out, we worked out that we were probably saving about 10,000 plastic bags a year just from the changing of those bins. We really put a lot of effort into the messaging around it. So there was a huge marketing campaign So we had signs everywhere telling people, you know, you're not bringing your disposable cup in here anymore. You can use your travel mug. If you use your travel mug, you'll get a discount. So we started off with giving discounts. We've now moved on to a levy. So we no longer give you a discount if you don't have your reusable cup. You'll pay a levy for a takeaway one. So again, we kind of use the combination of the carrot and stick approach, positive messaging, and giving ownership of the campaign to the staff within the library themselves, so that they were able to kind of manage it. It wasn't being managed centrally in the estates office. So the next slide. And then because we have a green forum that has representation from all the offices across the university, we're able to go through literally everything that happens in the university, look at where are the single-use plastics there, and kind of work out a timeline for how we're going to eliminate them, or as much as possible, I suppose. And again, it comes down to what we're doing on the buildings side. Are we making sure that the infrastructure is there? What are the different services in the university doing? What are our students doing? Obviously, we have EU regulations on single-use plastics in catering, but can we look at single-use plastics in labs as well? So really taking the whole institution approach again. Next slide. So I guess really, if I was to say that there's one thing that got us to that number one in SDG 12, it's the fact that we have sustainability included in our procurement process. So it's one of 6 principles in our procurement strategy. Obviously, we're a public body, so there is some difficulties with including sustainability in procurement. We can't include it in the shortlisting criteria, but we can include it in the award criteria. And so it was part of the renewal of our catering contract, which meant that when that contract went out, we got a really good company that came back that had ideas on how they could bring sustainability into how they were working on campus. It means as well that once that contract is decided, there's a committee that manages the contract, and because sustainability was part of that, I then sit on that committee. So we review it regularly. We think about new ideas, new things that can be rolled out. And it was from that really that the whole single-use plastic-free cafe that we launched last year came about. So most of the bigger impact projects, I would say, that we've done on campus over the last couple of years have been because we've been able to put sustainability into our procurement process. Next slide. And so it does come back then, I guess, everything that we've done, we're kind of looking at how we can influence behavioural change, how can we encourage it through those good news stories, how can we engage it through the marketing, through people seeing things on campus constantly that remind them, how can we enable them through the infrastructure, and how can we exemplify by having that top-down commitment. And that's, I think, is there another slide? Yeah, so I guess the conclusion, actually, it was interesting overall in that Times Higher Education ranking. Ireland came number 2 as a country, which I think is a lot to do with the fact that we do have the Green Flag programme here as a framework. That's what all the universities are using. And it is a very flexible one, but it does require collaboration. And it does mean that you can you can look at your own context, you can work out how to be better within your own situation. So the change becomes quite organic, it becomes owned by everyone within the institution as opposed to just one person. So even though I'm ultimately responsible for delivering our sustainability projects, really I'm a coordinator, and it's everyone in UCC that owns Green Campus, and everyone comes up with their own ideas. And that's how we've worked a lot of our sustainability projects. So I think that's it.
That's brilliant. So we've got a minute or so for any questions. If anybody's got any, do feel free to raise your hand or send them through on the chat box. But until then, I mean, I have some questions. I just think it's so interesting. In terms of procurement, how do you get your procurement team on board with this? Because I think a lot of them in institutions are very finance orientated, and it can be difficult to get them to see actually the long-term value of the sustainability element of it when actually it's kind of going to cost them financially in the short term. How do you do that?
Yeah. So again, that very much comes from the top level leadership in the university. So because our deputy president chairs our Green Forum, our procurement officer then sits on that forum. So she has sat on that forum for, the last number of years. So every time she goes to that meeting, she's obviously thinking, what can I bring to that meeting? And it does, so then it becomes part of what the university does. So we do get a lot of, just last week I had an email from someone in Conferrings who says, this is what we're going to do in Conferrings now for Green Campus. I'll get something from IT saying this is what IT is going to do for Green Campus. And that really comes from that top level leadership, that all of those offices across the university know that this is part of UCC. We need to buy into this. We need to be involved. And
the library element of it as well. I mean, we have heard of libraries taking a strong role in this sort of thing, but it almost sounds like that was so central to this. I mean, again, how did you get the library on board? How did you assess that actually the library was probably, like you said, it is the heart of the institution, that was the best place to start, or was it them inputting first? Or?
I mean, that was behind the messaging element. Getting them involved in the first place was actually to do with energy consumption. So the library was one of our most energy intensive buildings. So our energy manager rolled out a project, a Save or Save scheme, where he went out to those buildings that were using up a lot of energy. He devolved the energy budget to the building and said, whatever savings you make will remain with you to then spend on other environmental projects. So they then had their own budget from their energy savings to spend on environmental projects. And they then made the decision that they were going to look at waste, because they have so many students coming in and out of the building all the time. And we felt in general that students felt like they had more engagement with the waste aspect.
Brilliant, fascinating. Right, if anybody else has any other questions for Maria, do get in touch with us, and I'm sure we can send them along to her and put you in touch. But let's just conscious of time, so I think we're going to thank Maria very much for that and move on. So next up we've got Ashley Shelbrooke. He is a procurement specialist at HEPA, which is the Higher Education Procurement Association. So I'm going to hand over to Ashley.
Thank you very much. So we've got a couple of slides, and hopefully if you guys can see on the screen at the moment. First of all, I thought it would be worth just introducing what HEPA is as an organisation, because I think when we were chatting in advance of this cup of tea and SDG, it's really exciting that a lot of, I think that you colleagues on the phone today, you're sort of from the sustainability teams, maybe estates teams and academics as well. And I thought I'd just sort of take a couple of minutes to tell you what HEPA is, because it's a bit of a strange organisation. And then in the second slide, we can sort of move on and talk about some of the really good things that we do in terms of responsible procurement nationally. So a bit of a background as to HEPA, really. It was set up in 2011 in response to a Diamond report, really, which looked at three main things. They were collaboration, behaviour within universities and their commercial environments, and also data management as well. So there are a number of things that came out of that Diamond report. A lot of it, as colleagues have already mentioned in the previous presentation, was coming from a finance point of view. It was coming from a looking at it from a savings point of view. So, for example, there was a target to put 30% of university spend through collaborative agreements, which is a really good way of leveraging your demand and getting better value from suppliers. But there was also a load of recommendations around, as I say, things around collaboration and things around behaviour of universities as well. So not necessarily just considering the financial value of a procurement, but also taking in the whole life cost of that procurement as well. So that was why HEPA was set up. It's been going for probably since 2011, and we've got a number of initiatives that are in place to support that, really. So in terms of the mission of HEPA, really what we do is we provide a range of tools, resources and training to help colleagues across the procurement teams in higher education, I guess really demonstrate things like value for money, efficiency and effectiveness. So we work right across procurement teams, all the way from new procurement apprentice right the way through to head of procurement, providing them with that advice, training and support. So I guess in terms of our membership, there's about 4,000 members from the procurement community which make up HEPA. And we're really very much guided by the needs and requirements of those members and of our board as well. So we have a number of resources that we have available to our membership to help them sort of meet the, requirements of their universities from a procurement point of view. So if we just sort of switch over to the second slide, we can talk through a few of those resources as well, specifically in relation to the Sustainable Development Goals. So it's really interesting listening to colleagues in the previous presentation, and again to sort of understand how you guys got your procurement teams involved. It's really, I think, very interesting. In a number of universities across the country, we're seeing, in particular, that maybe vice-chancellors committing to UN Sustainable Development Goals. And the really powerful thing about that is it means that if a vice-chancellor has committed to that, it really enables the procurement teams within the university to, align their strategies to that of the vice-chancellor's potential commitment to delivering the Sustainable Development Goals. So of the Sustainable Development Goals, the one that is probably most relevant to procurement, although all of them have a link, but the one that's most relevant is probably Sustainable Development Goal 12, which we're sort of talking about today, and that's all around responsible consumption and production. So in terms of what we have, what we've actually got on the ground that our colleagues across procurement teams can access and utilise in terms of HEPA's resources, I guess the first thing to talk about is probably our Responsible Procurement Group. So our Responsible Procurement Group has now been running for a couple of years, and it really exists to, I guess, move the agenda forward in procurement in terms of a number of issues, really. So we already mentioned that we look to define procurement as something that isn't just a financial element. It's something that includes ethical and sustainable factors as well, looking to include environmental, economic and social issues, looking at the risks and benefits of all of those things. So the Responsible Procurement Group is all about making sure that as a community of procurement practitioners, we are on top of the latest developments and best practice in this space. So I guess a lot of the work that we've done to date in the Responsible Procurement Group has looked at just taking modern slavery as an example. So HEPA did last year an audit of modern slavery statements, for example, in universities, and looked at them in terms of compliance and how we could help organisations improve those statements, and in some cases bring to their attention the fact that they needed a statement as well. So we've done an awful lot of work in modern slavery, and we will continue to do that this year as well. We, as part of the Responsible Procurement Group, have four, key themes that we're focusing on. So we've already mentioned modern slavery, which really fits into the human rights theme. Some of the other ones that we are looking at in terms of how we can utilise procurement to deliver benefits in a sort of more responsible and sustainable way is looking at packaging. So we talk about, for instance, working with purchasing consortia, so people like LUPC, SUPC, NEPC and WPC and APUC right across the country to look at what we can do with suppliers in terms of reducing, for example, plastics in the packaging that they're using when they are delivering goods to universities. Another theme which is really starting to take off now, and you can really do some really innovative and novel stuff with it in the procurement sense, is social value. So again, that's really sort of looking well beyond procurement as a value for money exercise, and looking at what it can deliver in terms of wider benefits. So in England and Wales, that would, I guess, relate to the Social Value Act. In its colleagues in Scotland, this is all about community benefits. So it's really looking at how we can use procurement to drive more positive outcomes for our students, but also our communities more widely as well. So there's been some great examples of work that's done. For instance, getting if you're building you've got a big construction project, getting apprentices as part of that project to be able to sort of demonstrate a lot more social value and added value, I guess, to previously potentially would have been considered. The final thing of the Responsible Procurement Group that's just worth mentioning in relation to SDG 12 is around carbon reduction. So we have a specific working group looking at carbon reduction and what we can do as a sector there. And the one thing, again, is worth mentioning on this webinar, as it's being hosted by EAUC, is the work that we're doing with Fiona and the team around the Scope 3 calculation tools that we have in universities, where they are at the moment, and what we could potentially do to make them better going forwards as well, in terms of the procurement inputs to those. I guess just to kind of finish up, we've got 5 minutes of the whole webinar left, just to kind of bring to your attention really some of the e-learning that we have. So we mentioned that one of HEPA's primary objectives really is around looking at training and skills development and being able to offer our members, procurement practitioners across the sector, access to the training they need to develop the skills that they need to do their job and fulfil those strategies that the universities have. So as part of HEPA's offering, we have a series of e-learning modules. These are available free of charge to members of higher education institutions. So if you're sat there today and are thinking you want to learn a bit more about what sustainable procurement is, we have a module which introduces that. We also have a module that is a guide to modern slavery, and another module which is about protecting human rights in the supply chain. So those are 3 really good e-learning modules that we've developed in conjunction with experts in the field to be able to offer to our members to help them skill themselves up for to be able to deliver responsible procurement in general. We have a number of other e-learning modules as well. Probably won't surprise you to learn that some of those are around the more finance elements, but those 3 are really brilliant ones that look at, in detail, supply chains, modern slavery, and also, as I say, if you have colleagues in institutions who aren't perhaps familiar with what sustainable procurement is, there's a really great introductory module there as well. I guess the final thing to mention is just one that we're working on at the moment, which is looking at, again, in relation to Sustainable Development Goal 12, we're looking at ISO 20400, which is all around sustainable procurement. And so ISO, it's not a standard that you're measured against, it's a guidance document. So again, we're looking at what we can do in terms of e-learning to roll that one out to our members and help them align their procurement practices to some of the best practice that the ISO that they've come up with. That's a whistle-stop tour of what HEPA's been doing around responsible procurement. There's a load of great work that universities are doing in the procurement space, and it's really good to be able to come onto these webinars and share it with colleagues which aren't necessarily in the procurement team. So please, if you've got any questions, either fire away now, and I'd love to answer them, or just drop us an email. All the contact details are on our website. It's just HEPA, HEPA, that's .ac.uk.
Brilliant. Thanks so much for that, Ashley. And I think you're right. I think we are starting to see sustainability sort of go into these other departments now. So it's a really interesting time, and it's really crucial to get that support from other sort of sector organisations to support the sustainability team and the procurement team sort of bridge that gap.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any questions? If you do, feel free to send them through on the chat box or raise your hand, or you can send them to us afterwards, as Ashley said. If not, I think from our side, what would you say? I know you're higher education, so this is putting you a little bit on the spot, but we cover FE as well. What would you say is the first step towards starting to incorporate sustainability into procurement practices? What's the very first thing that institutions need to do, would you say?
I think it's probably getting that, similar to the previous answer what Moira gave. It's around getting that buy-in at the senior level. So, we work with higher education institutions, and that would be the vice-chancellor level. So a number of vice-chancellors have, I think we mentioned in the talk, committed to, I guess, working towards the UN Sustainable Development Goals. So if you've got that high-level commitment from the Vice-Chancellor, you can then build your procurement strategy and align it directly to that. So I think that's probably, getting that top-level buy-in and then being able to align your procurement strategy to that.
Okay, brilliant. Just a quick question here. How do institutions actually know if they're a member of HEPA or not? Do you have a list of them anywhere? Is it on the website?
So every member of, so every higher education institution, so every university is a member of HEPA. We're part of something called the British Universities Finance Directors Group, and I don't think there's any university that's not a member of that. So if you're a university, you should be able to access all of our resources on our website. You need to register because a lot of it is, I guess we've got our intellectual property in there and so on. So we don't just want any old Tom, Dick or Harry logging on and sort of doing our e-learning. But yeah, if you're a university, you'll be a member. If you can't get access, just let me know. But there is a process to register, and our colleagues in the membership office will then administer that and give you access to the website.
Brilliant. Thanks ever so much for that, Ashley. So we are out of time today, so I better wrap this up. But I just want to say a really big thank you to both our presenters today. I think that's been really useful information. I found it very interesting. We have got some more of these lined up for this week. So if anybody's interested in climate action, which I think about everyone is at the moment, do get involved with our webinar tomorrow, same time, 10 a.m. You just need to sign up on the website. As mentioned at the beginning of this webinar, this has been recorded, so we will make this available as a resource to members. And before you go, if you could pop over to Slido, so that's on a web browser, slido.do, put in the code SDG12, and just give us a little bit of feedback about this webinar. That would be really, really useful. Any other questions, do get in touch with us. You can email me directly, rsabin@eauc.org.uk. And thanks for joining us. That's all for today. Thank you.